was microservices, but kind of, I mean, this is a good diagram that I found that kind of illustrates what microservices are, right? So typically, if you see the first part, it's a spaghetti, and I'm sure for those of you who've eaten Italian cuisine and have kind of have had spaghetti or Maggie, if you just look into that, right? Everything is interconnected. You don't know what kind of is leading where, right? So that's how the monolithic systems kind of evolved over a period of time. They were tightly coupled, right? Everything kind of touched everything else. So if you had to make change, you have to kind of do all of them together and ensure that if you change something, you're not stepping on somebody else's shoes, right? So over a period of time, as systems underwent a lot of change, right? They matured, right? The spaghetti becomes more convoluted, right? And then making changes by itself takes a humongous effort. So I think that's the problem that came of it. So and kind of that's kind of what evolved. Uh, and then we came to kind of a service-oriented architecture, wherein you kind of define services, right? And then you kind of communicated through them through enterprise integration patterns. Like you could do that through services that basically send messages to each other, or you would have an endpoint such as an FTP that you kind of picked messages from and started the flow, right? But this was essentially asynchronous, right? So it allowed you to make changes to individual pieces and do that, but then all of that has to be kind of carefully altered because the contract was not explicit. So you had to go there and then ensure everybody understood what you are making changes and do that, right? And SOA is not new. It's, I mean, Linux has been having SOA and loose coupling, a principle of microservices, which is to do one thing and do things well from like 1970s, right? It's just that the underlying software ecosystem was not mature enough to kind of take this distributed system design to the software as a product, right? I think that's where around 2014, 2015 we kind of started getting once Netflix kind of came and then kind of they had their own ecosystem deployed and they outsourced it. That's kind of when the world kind of really got to know of a mature system which could handle distributed system in a better way, right? So that's kind of where you had the Netflix open source component and appropriate components there that kind of came in and that tackled the distributed system design problems in a fairly intuitive and stable way, right? So that's kind of where microservices really came into mainstream, all right? So kind of the crux of microservices would be you create independent services that you develop and deploy independently, and they are linked through a shared, either it could be an synchronous API calls, or you could also share data through a sync mechanism, could be a message queue, or could be an event driven architecture, right? So that's kind of where we evolved from the monolith to microservices architecture. So a lot of people just move to a microservice for the sake of it, but it's not an easy shift, right? You do have to consider, because any distributed system comes with its own unique set of challenges. But that's an overall architecture, right? Okay.